Red tide has been wreaking havoc on the Sun Coast for weeks now, killing fish and other sea life and then causing the deaths of birds and animals that eat those dead fish. And if it's so bad for wildlife, what in the world is it doing to us humans? We welcome Dr. Faisal Ahmad, a pulmonologist with Intercoastal Medical Group. He is here to help us protect ourselves and our families from red tide. Oh, this odor is awful, Dr. Ahmad. What is it doing to our bodies?
Well, I think it's important to understand exactly what causes red tide. There's an algae called Carnea brevis, and it releases a toxin called brevetoxin. So what your exposure is to the toxin really determines what kind of symptoms you have. So if you're swimming in an algae bloom, you're going to have skin irritation, burning of your eyes. If you're eating fish that was exposed to the algae, essentially you'll have something called neurotoxic shellfish poisoning, which causes stomach discomfort, things of that nature. And then if you have what's more common, the inhalation of the brevetoxin, you're going to have cough and symptoms that affect your lungs, which is shortness of breath, runny nose, sore throat, things of that.
I have a quick question about the toxin itself. Candace mentioned in Lakewood Ranch, which is quite a ways inland, that they were able to smell it. If there is the smell, does that mean the toxin itself would be in the air?
Yeah, that's what you're exposing yourself to, and a lot of it depends on the wind pattern. So last week when we had a lot of wind, it actually pushed a lot of it inward, and so you could smell it right where she mentioned in Lakewood Ranch, etc. And so I think this week's been a lot better with wind. And, usually the red tide occurs further offshore, 10 to 40 miles offshore, and I think the wind patterns have brought that closer to our coast.
What about the people with allergies or with lung disease in our community?
Yeah, those people tend to have symptoms that can be persistent. Usually a person with normal health will be exposed to the red tide, they'll have symptoms, and as soon as they get that exposure removed, as if they go inland a little bit further, they'll feel better. And people with lung disease and allergies, their symptoms may persist for several days afterwards.
So, is the fact that it's been around so long going to mean that it has the worst effect on us? Because I never remember it being around this long.
Yeah, I think there's some actually theories that the red tide actually gets worse after a major storm. So the year following a major storm, you'll have problems. So we had Hurricane Irma last year, and therefore we're having the worst effects this year. There's some theories about it that way. Whether it has long-term benefits, I think most of it is mostly acute, meaning it's short-term. So essentially, if you're exposed to it, you have a problem, the best way to get yourself better is to remove yourself from the exposure.
Have you seen more patients coming into your office with complaints of respiratory distress?
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, the bread and butter of my profession is people with asthma, emphysema, COPD.
Right.
And essentially, they're coming in with chronic complaints, cough, shortness of breath, exacerbations, essentially. Wow. So that requires me to use inhalers, maybe change their inhalers around, perhaps using oral medications, even in some cases admitting to the hospital.
Wow. Is there anything that we can do about it, like wear a mask or anything like that?
I mean, the most important thing is obviously remove yourself from the exposure. So if you love to go to the beach, you got to take a break from that. If you're going to be, doing activities outdoors, probably take a break from that, or maybe move those activities further away from the coast. There is some data that suggests that wearing like a paper surgical type mask can reduce your exposure by almost 50%.
Oh.
But the thing is, how long does that last? We don't really know.
And with the odor coming in, are we going to have to wear those inside?
Yeah, close the windows, use the AC.
There's so much we don't know about red tide, isn't there?
Well, it's been around for centuries. I mean, the early explorers that came to Florida back several hundred years ago would record they see dead fish and foul smell in the air. So it's been around as part of the natural environment. Sometimes just the weather and determining the temperature and the salt content of the ocean will determine whether the bloom is heavy or not.
And we've got so many more people here than we used to have back
Right, and
then.
a lot of them are frail, older, and they tend to have a little bit more disease. So, they can affect them a little bit heavier than people that are a little bit younger.
A hard question for me is, when should I go to the doctor? I don't want to go too early and have him say there's nothing wrong with you. But when should people go with this red tide, should seek medical help?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows when's the best time, but I think if your symptoms are persisting more than a day and you have lung disease or bad allergies, just make a phone call, and you can ask the nursing staff at their office and say, hey, I'm having this problem, should I come in and see the doctor? They can probably help you out with that, or just make an appointment if you feel comfortable with your physician.
Can you do something for me when I get there?
I can give you a mask for sure.
So there is help available, and we can just wait it out, I guess.
Yeah, you just got to find the right medical care, find a good physician that can help you out, maybe give you some consultation about what to do. But I think the most important thing is just avoid it when you can feel that wind coming in and you can smell it.
Yeah.
You know, and then at that point, you know, just do the best that you can to protect your airway.
So smell's the sign. If we smell it, then we know the toxins are present and we need to get inside.
That's the best thing.
All right, good advice.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure.
It's great to have you here at Ease Our Minds. Thank you. And for more information about red tide and other health issues, go to intercoastalmedical.com.